Kapunda, a peaceful township about an hour north of Adelaide, was deeply for her friends. In high school, she was well liked, the kind of girl people noticed when she entered a room. Among her circle of acquaintances was an 18-year-old named Jason Downey. He was shy, somewhat awkward, not especially popular, but he admired Chantelle from afar. He became infatuated with her, obsessed even. And when his feelings weren't returned, his admiration twisted into something dark and possessive. In his mind, rejection wasn't something to accept, it was something to punish. For weeks, he watched her social media updates, looked at her photos, and replayed brief conversations they'd had. To her, he was just another boy from town, a classmate, maybe a friend. To him, she had become the center of an unhealthy fantasy. He began imagining ways to make her notice. Door left unlocked. Perhaps a window pried open. What matters is that once inside, he became something unrecognizable. The quiet of the living room was shattered by sudden movement, the creak of a floorboard, a muffled cry. Chantelle, hearing a noise, stepped into the hall. The boy she knew stood there, holding a knife, his eyes wild. Confusion turned to fear. She screamed. Her parents woke instantly. Andrew ran toward the sound, Rose right behind him. What they found would be every parent The once safe home on Harriet Street had become a tomb. Jason Downey stood in the middle of that horror, staring at what he had done. There was no panic, no immediate remorse, just an eerie stillness. Then, slowly, he left. He walked into the night, leaving bloody footprints that would later lead police straight to him. Outside, the town slept peacefully, unaware that evil had just walked among them. The sky was clear, the stars bright, and no one could imagine the tragedy unfolding only a few streets away. Schools closed early. Local churches opened for prayer. The Rowes had been loved by everyone. Their loss felt personal to the whole town. That day, Kapunda lost more than a family. It lost its innocence. By the next morning, the town of Kapunda had transformed from a quiet Australian suburb into a place gripped by fear and disbelief. News spread faster than wildfire. Police vehicles surrounded the Rowe home, and crime scene tape fluttered in the early morning breeze. Reporters arrived before noon, but even they struggled to describe what had happened inside that modest house. The brutality of the murders stunned investigators. The sheer number of stab wounds, the chaos, the rage that painted the walls in blood. Whoever had done this wasn't just angry. They were Autopsy results painted an even more horrifying picture. Andrew Rowe had suffered over 25 stab wounds. Rose had been attacked more than a dozen times, and Chantelle, the youngest, had been stabbed and slashed repeatedly, her struggle evident from defensive wounds on her hands and arms. The killer hadn't just murdered, he had destroyed. The violence suggested deep emotion, personal anger. This wasn't random. Police began looking at everyone connected to the family: relatives, friends, co-workers, classmates. It didn't take long for one name to surface more than once: Jason Downey. He was quiet, polite, but several students at Kapunda High mentioned how he'd once liked Chantelle. Some said he'd talked about her constantly. Others remembered him acting jealous when she spoke to other boys. There were gaps, long, suspicious periods where his location couldn't be accounted for. Meanwhile, the community mourned. Kapunda's streets filled with flowers, candles, and tears. A small memorial grew outside the Rowe home. Messages like, "Rest in peace," and "Forever in our hearts." The entire country was watching. It was impossible to comprehend how anyone could murder a loving family, especially someone so young. As evidence mounted, police searched Downey's house. Inside his room, they found dark clothing, a pair of shoes with traces of blood, and a knife sheath that matched the weapon used in the killings. They also found photos of Chantelle and messages he had sent her, friendly at first, then bitter, jealous, even threatening. One line sent chills through investigators. That she chose others over him, that she didn't care how he felt. His words chilled everyone in the room. He admitted to stabbing her parents because they woke up and tried to stop him. He said he didn't mean to kill them, but his rage got out of control. When police asked why he didn't stop, he just stared at the table and muttered, I don't know. What made it even more horrifying was his lack of remorse. Even after describing the murders, he showed little emotion. No tears, no apology. Detectives later said it was as if he was talking about something that had happened to someone else. The news of his confession devastated the community. Jason Downey wasn't a stranger from the city. He was one of their own. He'd attended the same school, walked the same streets, smiled at the same people who now despised him. The idea that someone so young could commit such undeniable. By December 2010, just weeks after the murders, police officially charged Jason Downey with 3 counts of murder. The small town of Kapunda breathed a sigh of relief, but the wound he left would never truly heal. That night, when police escorted him into custody, a crowd gathered outside the station. Some shouted in anger, others stood silently, holding candles for the family he had taken away. For Kapunda, the nightmare was far from over. But justice finally had a face. When the trial for the Kapunda family murders began, the courtroom was heavy with grief. Every seat was filled. Relatives, friends, journalists, and residents who had come to witness the moment justice would speak for Andrew, Rose, and Chantelle Rowe. The man sitting quietly in the dock was barely more than a boy. 18 years old, pale, emotionless, eyes fixed downward. Jason Downey, the teenager who had destroyed an entire family and shattered a whole town's sense of safety. The prosecutors laid out a case that was almost unbearable to hear. They described how Jason had planned the murders, how his obsession with Chantelle had turned into rage after she rejected him. They read aloud his chilling confession, his own words describing the events of that night. The courtroom trembled with emotion as families wept openly. Some people couldn't bear to stay inside for long. The details were too brutal. Evidence after evidence left no doubt. The blood on his clothes, the DNA under his fingernails, the footprints in the Rowe home, and his phone records, all pointed to him. His lawyers attempted to argue that he was mentally disturbed, that his actions were the result of a sudden breakdown, but the judge saw through the excuses. This was not madness. This was obsession, jealousy, and cold-blooded murder. During the proceedings, Jason Downey showed almost no emotion. He did not cry. He did not apologize. His face remained blank, as if the horror he caused was someone else's memory. When asked by the judge if he wanted to say anything before sentencing, he only whispered that he was sorry. But his words were hours. They held photos of the Rowe family, their smiles shining brighter than the tears of those who loved them. In the months that followed, Kapunda tried to heal, but the memories refused to fade. The Rowe house was eventually sold, but neighbors said the air around it always felt heavy. The school held annual memorials for Chantelle. Her friends spoke about her kindness, her laughter, and how unfairly her life had been taken. The Rowes were remembered not for the way they died, but for the love they gave while they lived. Even years later, journalists and true crime enthusiasts still speak about the Kapunda murders. They say it was the moment innocence left the town, A reminder that even in the safest places, darkness can find a way in. But for the people of Kapunda, the Rowes live on in memory, not as victims, but as a family whose warmth and love continue to touch hearts long after they're gone. Inside his prison cell, Jason Downey spends each day in silence, serving a sentence that will likely last until middle age. Again over Kapunda, candles still flicker each year on the anniversary of their deaths. The town stands quiet, remembering a family gone too soon, and hoping that no one will ever again walk the same path of violence and regret. May their souls rest in peace. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories that reveal the darkest sides of human nature and remind us why justice matters.